to be brought center stage.
Every week, the India story will bring the most incisive analysis, the most authoritative voices.
India will be a significant pole in the universe of AI going forward.
India is walking tall, India's stature is different, India's voice is being heard.
And the biggest newsmakers.
This is just a start. Tokyo, we won one bronze. Paris, we won a rocket. Good to see that, women cricket is getting more excited and everybody is looking up to that.
And these stories need to be told, and they are guided by the compass of their conscience.
From India, for the world, the India story. The show for the global citizen.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all if you fail to prove.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Here's a quick look at what's lined up for you on the show tonight.
Are worked on by all different.
Our cover story tonight is about a leader who has been hit hard by a boomerang both domestically and internationally and is facing pointed questions, not just from India, but from his own people. Of course, I'm talking about the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Has he now emerged as a guardian of gangsters? Has he unleashed hidden demons in Canada? Another Khalistani terrorist, by the way, has been killed in Canada, which begs the question, why is the Canadian Prime Minister, who loves to be vocal on such issues, mute now? Has he, after all, become a guardian of gangsters? All this and more coming up in just a short while as the Canadian Prime Minister continues to try and wriggle out of a mess of his own making. Also on the show for you tonight, are Volodymyr Zelensky's closest allies now abandoning him? We tell you how and why Poland has decided to stop sending weapons to Ukraine. The UAE is imposing a ban on fresh meat imports from Pakistan after finding fungus in a consignment of meat. We tell you all about the decaying state of Pakistan. The Defence Committee's report clearly warns that the UK's combat aircraft fleet is alarmingly low in number. It also says that the UK will struggle to defend itself if there is an all-out war. We get to the complete story. Can depending on artificial intelligence and apps be lethal? We tell you why a family is suing Google Maps, blaming it for losing their loved one. In a stunning turn of events last night, a Khalistani terrorist based in Canada, Sukhdev Singh, also known as Sukha Dunke, was killed on Canadian soil. Killed in a shootout between gangs. You heard that right. And they have even claimed responsibility for the killing. That is what audacious gangsters do, after all, not just in movies, but also in real life, in a country where they can behave with impunity. So here is my question to the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. Why haven't you blamed India yet? Mr. Justin Trudeau, why have you chosen silence now instead of making one more wild, unsubstantiated charge without real evidence against India? Why haven't you dialed up your Western allies to join this blame game against India? Is it perhaps because this latest turn of events has proved what India has been conveying, that the killings in Canada are just an instance of criminal violence which has become endemic in parts of Canada because the police and other authorities have been turning a blind eye on the orders of their political masters now in power? Remember when Trudeau linked another Khalistani terrorist, Hardeep Singh Nijjar's deaths, to some mysterious unnamed people in Delhi? Well, it seems like Trudeau's political foolishness is finally catching up with him. But let's just dive into the heart of this matter, shall we? Sukhdev Singh was killed in cold blood, as they say, during crossfire of an inter-gang feud on Canadian streets. You heard that right. Inter-gang rivalry in Canada. After Sukhdev's killing, two figures from Punjab's underworld, Lawrence Bishnoi and Jagu Bhagwanpuria, put out separate Facebook posts to claim responsibility for his murder. Lawrence Bishnoi, by the way, happens to be behind bars, and he boldly declared his involvement in the killing of Sukhdev. He has the followers to implement his orders. But wait, there is more. Moments after Lawrence's brazen social media announcement, another gangster, Jagu Bhagwanpuria, also threw his hat into this blood-stained ring, claiming responsibility for the murder. Bhagwanpuria, once a close confidant of Bishnoi, has now become his bitter enemy. You see, it's a tangled web of gang rivalries. The Bambiha gang that Sukhdev was reportedly working with has rivalry with the Lawrence Bishnoi gang. And here's the thing, this marks the second instance of a Khalistani terrorist meeting a grim end on Canadian soil. Sukhdev met his fate in a similar fashion to the Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Nijjar was killed on the streets of Surrey in British Columbia on the 18th of June. Nijjar's death is currently at the heart of a diplomatic tussle between India and Canada. And that brings me to the burning question that we all must ponder upon. Has Trudeau become, because of his political compulsions, a guardian of gangsters? You see, his silence must be telling us something. Canada was not known for the king of mob violence and gang warfare that some cities became famous for, like Chicago, till the 1970s. Today, it has become a hub of Khalistani terrorists who have injected mob and mafia culture into Canada, a country once synonymous with peace. Indeed, the joke was that Canada was too boring. Nothing happened there. It has become a different story in the decade during which Justin Trudeau has been the Prime Minister. It has become a home for organized crime, for the drug trade, human trafficking. The Khalistani element in this crime world, with terrorist groups like Sikhs for Justice and Babar Khalsa International, have made it a base of anti-India activities, promoting violence against India in the name of secession. They don't hide their politics of hate. They don't hide their politics of violence, for they have nothing to fear from the Canadian authorities. And now they have created a situation where India-Canada ties have taken a heart-pounding nosedive. This is most unfortunate, for India-Canada relations had blossomed into a model of harmony and friendship and cooperation. But Justin Trudeau, you see, has unwittingly opened a Pandora's box of hidden demons. Indian diplomats and security agencies have pounded on Canada's door, urging Justin Trudeau to act against Khalistani terror, to act against the Khalistani gangsters, but to no avail. And because of this, Khalistani separatism, a concept that has zero traction in India's Sikh heartland, thrives in Canada. There it boldly hosts referendums demanding the creation of Khalistan, sliced right out of the Indian state. It survives because political patrons giving it a nod of approval. You see, erring politicians have mud on their face. Has Justin Trudeau ended up unwittingly with blood on his face, all because of his dangerous flirtation with the forces of anarchy? And in doing so, he has inadvertently given his blessing to their hate crimes. It is a grim reality that begs the big question. Has the Prime Minister of Canada become an unwitting accomplice in this sinister saga? Khalistani terrorists have etched their names in the annals of infamy for orchestrating some of the most horrific terror attacks. Remember the haunting 1985 Kanishka Airlines bombing? It claimed the lives of more than 300 people, including 85 innocent children. Yet, in the face of such tragedy, Trudeau's trusted political confidant, Canadian MP Jagmeet Singh, continues to throw his weight behind Khalistan. But let's just circle back to Sukhdev Singh. Reports have it that Sukha escaped to Canada back in 2017 using fake documents. In Punjab, his name is synonymous with criminality, as there are more than 10 cases registered against him. However, he is among the 43 listed gangsters who have been involved in anti-India terrorism, according to the NIA. And these gangsters left India on either Indian passports or through fake or forged travel documents or through the Nepal route in the past. They evade justice in India and continue their sinister activities on Canadian soil. Before Hardeep Singh Nijjar was killed by unknown assailants outside a Gurdwara in British Columbia in June, Punjab police had approached Canadian authorities seeking his extradition to India. But Nijjar was not the only one against whom action or information was sought. Overall, there are 21 key gangsters based in Canada who are wanted by Indian agencies, and their list and detailed evidence against them has been shared with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police on more than one occasion, by the way, in the past year. And earlier this year itself, the Indian counter-terrorism officials had informed the government that Khalistanis in Canada were using modus operandi such as letters to politicians there, creating signature campaigns, forcing debates in legislatures, and calling for punitive measures against India. A key organization behind these activities is Sikhs for Justice, run by Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, banned by the Ministry of Home Affairs. And now that we have laid down the facts for you, let's just return to the big question. When will Canada's staunch allies, those who have been so vocally concerned about Trudeau's allegations, start asking the Canadian Prime Minister the tough questions? Let's not mince words here. Nijjar met his end on Canadian soil, and so did Sukhdev. So it is high time Canada's allies ask why these killings are happening right under Justin Trudeau's nose. Perhaps most crucially, will they ask Trudeau why he seems willing to jeopardize relations with a strategically vital democracy in pursuit of mere vote bank politics? The stakes, after all, are high. Alliances are fragile, and the entire world is watching with rapt attention as this political drama unfolds on the global stage. And speaking of allies, are Volodymyr Zelensky's allies abandoning him? Have they become tired of the war and Zelensky's demands? Is there fatigue setting in among his allies? These questions crop up courtesy a recent statement from Poland. That's right, Poland has decided to not send weapons to Ukraine. The Polish Prime Minister says that his country will no longer send arms and ammunition to Kiev. And why is that, you ask? Because he wants to arm his country first, safeguard the interests of his people. Let me just get to you his official statement. We are no longer transferring weapons to Ukraine because we are now arming Poland with more modern weapons. That's the statement. And immediately after this statement, these visuals emerged. They showed trains full of Ukrainian grain waiting at the Polish border. And reports say they have been stuck for over 48 hours. Now, this statement is intriguing to say the least, especially given how Poland is one of Ukraine's main weapon suppliers. And ever since the war broke out, it has also been one of the largest cheerleaders of Ukraine. So why has it decided to abandon Ukraine all of a sudden? Well, from where we see it, it's just a tit-for-tat move. You see, earlier this week, this report came out. It said Ukraine was planning to sue Poland, Hungary and Slovakia. And why is that? Because of their refusal to drop a ban on Ukraine's agricultural products. Let me explain this. Earlier this year, several European nations placed a ban on Ukrainian grains to protect the livelihoods of the local farmers. The farmers in question were becoming increasingly worried that their products will get undercut because of the low prices of Ukrainian grains. And last week, the EU lifted the ban on humanitarian grounds. But Poland, Hungary and Slovakia, these three said they intend to defy the change and keep the restrictions in place. And this, you see, led to a war of words. Kiev issued several ultimatums. It called their actions ethically wrong. And this war of words has now escalated. With Poland stopping military aid to Ukraine, the timing of the decision is quite interesting. It comes right ahead of the parliamentary elections in Poland. They are supposed to be held next month. The ruling dispensation faces a tough challenge. It is fighting against an increasingly popular far-right party, which is expected to put up a tough fight. So it's a do-or-die battle for the Polish Prime Minister. And he cannot risk inviting the fury of the Polish citizens. This pretty much explains Poland's decision. It has been taken in light of domestic compulsions, just to put it simply. And let me now quote another statement from the Polish Prime Minister. It reads, "We were the first to do a lot for Ukraine, and that's why we expect for them to understand our interests. Of course, we respect all of their problems, but for us, the interests of our farmers are the most important thing." So we get Poland's compulsions. What about Slovakia and Hungary? Well, their reasons are more or less similar. In Slovakia as well, there are elections coming up. They are scheduled for September 30th. The grain dispute is featuring prominently in the political campaigning. The opposition is using it to enhance its electoral prospects. So the current pro-Western government is not taking any chances. It has imposed import restrictions on Ukrainian grain. Next, we have Hungary. The country's current leader has been pro-Russia throughout the course of the war, because he thinks NATO is using this war to represent American interests and not European interests. He does not have an election coming up anytime soon, but he is using the war to build his domestic support base. Now, here's the thing. Ukraine could have avoided the situation. At least two of these countries have been its vehement supporters in the war. But putting pressure on them in multilateral forums or sending complaints to international tribunals does not really look like an appropriate method to resolve disputes, especially when you are dependent on the very same countries for military aid. And this also raises other questions. Questions like, is support for Ukraine beginning to wane within the European countries? I ask these questions because this conflict has challenged the most basic assumptions of Europeans about their security. You know, it has brought the specter of nuclear confrontation back to their continent, disrupted their economies, triggered an energy crisis, and led to shortages of food. And after almost 2 years of the war, most people in Western countries are saying they want their leaders to focus more on internal issues. Issues which they say have been sidelined due to the war. Have European leaders started to listen to their people? It certainly seems to be the case. And our next story is from Pakistan. It has just received some bad news from the UAE. The Sheikhdom has decided to ban imports of fresh meat from Pakistan. And why is that? Because Islamabad was apparently sending rotten meat. I'm not making this up. This actually happened. Have a look at this report. It says the UAE will no longer be importing frozen meat from Pakistan via sea route. And this decision was taken after the country allegedly found fungus in a consignment of meat. I repeat, the UAE found fungus in a meat consignment from Pakistan. In another instance, a company was found sending sub-quality fresh meat to the UAE. The consignment in question had been sent by a Karachi-based company. The whole shipment was destroyed by the authorities. They have also vowed to not accept any meat consignments through maritime channels, at least up till the 10th of October. And the decision is significant because a majority of Pakistan's fresh meat exports go to the UAE. According to ARY News, Pakistan sends fresh meat to the UAE on a monthly basis for a value of $12 million. Meat exporters in Pakistan now say this ban will impact Pakistan's overall export figures. Let me quote one of their statements. Export volume of meat for overall Pakistan will go down by 2/3 as Pakistan will only be limited to export what can be sent via air, and airspace has limitations and it is expensive as well. So where Pakistan made its space in the UAE against other countries, it will also be lost. So you know what happened, you know what followed. Let's now get down to some questions. Are instances like these signs of Pakistan's decaying facilities? Are they a sign of despair that has set in across Pakistani institutions? I mean, just have a look at the state of affairs there. Almost every Pakistani institution seems to be crumbling. Let me give you a sense of this decay and how far it has spread. Just 4 days back, the country witnessed another massive hike in fuel prices. The prices of petrol and diesel exceeded 330 Pakistani rupees for the first time. This was by far one of the biggest hikes in the country. It has reignited discontent, uncertainty and hopelessness among Pakistani citizens. And reports say there were also protests in some parts of the country. This hike was followed by this report. It said Pakistan is expected to be hit by massive inflation once again due to the soaring prices of essentials. And if I speak of the Pakistani rupee, it now takes 289 Pakistani rupees to get $1. The currency has been in a perpetual state of decline ever since the year started. And it does not even end there. The country is also grappling with an energy crisis, of course. The cost of electricity has doubled in the last 3 months. There are protests against the rising electricity bills. Just last week, a project in Karachi even turned violent, with protesters attacking employees at an electricity distribution company. The question is, what is Pakistan doing to bring the prices under control? Well, it's requesting the IMF for relief, but the IMF also is unwilling to grant more relief. And we are hardly surprised, because Islamabad has already taken enough from the financial body. Yet, none of its problems have been solved. The country's leaders have only themselves to blame for this mess. And amid this overlapping crisis and concoction of miseries, Pakistani leaders seem to be trying to divert public attention. And divert it to what? Pakistan's ancient history. More like India's ancient history, given how the country was carved out of India. Let's just tell you what I'm talking about here. A statement by Pakistan's interim foreign minister, Jalil Abbas Jilani. He recently attended the Asia Society Congress in New York, where he made a slightly bizarre remark. He said that Pakistan is the birthplace of Hinduism and a cradle for Buddhist civilization. Listen to this. We will get to that in just a bit. Now, what he essentially said is that, I'm quoting, ours is a country where Hinduism was born. And now we know his compulsions behind saying that. Pakistan is cash-strapped. It's in urgent need of money. And what better way to make money than attract some tourists? That said, what Mr. Jilani said might make sense to him. But what he forgets is that there was no Pakistan when Hinduism was born. It did not even exist. Hinduism is over 4,000 years old. Pakistan is just 76 years old. How exactly was Hinduism born there? It might have the ruins of ancient Hindu temples on its soil. It might have the ruins of ancient Hindu civilizations. But it can in no way claim to be the birthplace of Hinduism. The UK's lead aircraft carrier stands 2/3 empty. The number of jets in the Royal Air Force has nosedived, and the British government made significant cuts to the defence budgets. The UK's ability to fight from the air hangs in the balance. And why just air? The situation is quite similar on the ground as well. The British Army has been asked to employ fewer troops. So what is the UK planning after all? Why is it weakening its own defence? Have the mighty British fallen? Our next report getting you more details.
This is Britain's flagship HMS Queen Elizabeth. It is 920 feet long. It has the capacity to accommodate 36 F-35B Lightning jets. It was designed to routinely carry up to 24 planes on operations. Currently, the vessel is leading an international patrol around Norway and the North Atlantic. But guess what? It only has 8 fifth-generation fighters on board. Britain's lead aircraft carrier is 2/3 empty. In contrast, when America's largest carrier, USS Gerald R. Ford, visited Norway earlier this year, it had more than 40 aircraft on board. Dozens of them were F-18 fighter jets. The question is, what does this say about the UK? That it's just not spending enough on defense. We are not the ones saying that. It's the British lawmakers. They have realized this report. It says the Royal Air Force, or RAF, lacks capabilities across combat, air transport and early warning aircraft. The MPs have warned of nose-diving numbers of planes in the RAF, and they have blamed the government's budget cuts for it. Consider the facts yourself. The C-130J Hercules fleet was the RAF's primary tactical transport aircraft. It was used for a range of operations, including troop movements, airdrops, special forces and humanitarian relief. Yet it was retired 7 years earlier than its out-of-service date. Why, you may ask? Well, to save money. Then the E-7 Wedgetail fleet was downsized. Instead of 5 planes, the UK now plans to buy 3 Wedgetails from Australia. The Royal Air Force has 31 F-35B stealth fighters. The number is set to rise to 48 by 2025. Senior air marshals have an aspiration to increase the fleet to 74, but even that will be significantly less than the original figure of 138. The Defence Committee's report clearly warns that UK's combat aircraft fleet is alarmingly low in number. It also says that the UK would struggle to defend itself if there is an all-out war, and this is when there is already a war underway in the continent. Has the Great Britain taken no lessons? The United Kingdom's fixed-wing aircraft inventory has been in free fall since the end of the Cold War. In 1990, it has 579 aircraft. In 2023, it merely has 205. The British combat fleet of 169 airframes is smaller than that of France, which is 231, Germany at 214 and Italy at 199. The British Army has been asked to cut troop numbers from 82,000 to 73,000 by 2025. This is all thanks to UK's frugality. The Ministry of Defence ordered budget cuts in 2021. This has created a gap in combat air capability, and it is predicted to persist well into the 2030s. The Defence Committee says Britain has been left dangerously exposed. The Royal Air Force is struggling even to produce new pilots. This is in parts due to decrepit planes and few instructors. But when it comes to helping Ukraine, the UK has been loyal. It hasn't held back from providing aid, weapons or training. But shouldn't it take care of its own defense first? Bureau Report. WION. World is One.
Can we bring an extinct species back to life? Although that may sound impossible, scientists are now one step closer to reviving the extinct Tasmanian tiger. Experts have decoded RNA molecules from the creature for the very first time. And they say that learning the genetic makeup could help bring the animal back in some form. Let's break this down for you one by one. A research team has sequenced ribonucleic acid of the skin of the animal. And the RNA will essentially help identify the Tasmanian tigers, also known as thalissines, specific genes. And this information will form the animal's transcriptome. Similar to how information is stored in DNA is called genome. Experts say, and I'm quoting, RNA gives you the chance to go through the cell, the tissues, and find the real biology that has been preserved in time for that animal, the thylacine species, right before they died. But there is a problem here. Obtaining RNA from historical samples is extremely challenging. You see, once extracted from an extinct species, ribonucleic acid rapidly breaks down into smaller fragments. And experts say, I'm quoting, outside of living cells, it's believed to be degraded or destroyed in minutes. It was surprising that we found these authentic RNA sequences in this mummified Tasmanian tiger. So what is the function of RNA? RNA, also called ribonucleic acid, allows us to put together a more complete picture of an animal's biology. You see, RNA is like a messenger that carries instructions from the DNA. It also assists in protein synthesis, gene regulation, and cell metabolism. So when did the world see the last Tasmanian tiger? It was in the year 1936. at the Beaumaris Zoo in Hobart. The last Tasmanian tiger died living in captivity, and reports say the species virtually disappeared nearly 2,000 years ago and survived only in the Australian island state of Tasmania. And reports say that the RNA could help bring back the species and find out old viruses to discover the cause of the past pandemics. Will RNA change the future of the extinct species? Scientists have come close to bringing back an extinct species earlier. The Bocado, a subspecies of wild mountain goat, was confirmed extinct in the year 2000, but scientists had extracted some of the animal's cells before death and froze them for preservation. And in the year 2003, scientists made attempts to clone the Bocado and achieved one successful birth. Although the Bocado became the first species to return from extinction, the animal's lungs were misshapen and it suffocated to death within minutes. The Bocado went back to being extinct. Have the scientists learned from this? We will have to wait and watch. Whether it's a road trip or a drive to a grocery store, who or what do you rely on for directions? I'm guessing for a majority of you, the answer would be Google Maps. But is Google Maps, or any application for that matter, completely reliable? Should we depend on them as much as we really do? And what happened to this man might make you rethink your decisions. His name is Philip Paxson. He is no more, and his family blames it on Google Maps. What really happened? Philip Paxson drowned. A year ago, he was driving home from his daughter's birthday party. It was a dark and rainy night. Paxson was in an unfamiliar neighborhood, so he turned to Google Maps for help. The app directed him to cross a bridge, only that the bridge was collapsed. Did Google Maps warn Paxson about it? Reports say it did not. The app failed to update its navigation system, as per reports. An unsuspecting Paxson drove off the collapsed bridge. His truck plunged into Snow Creek in Hickory, North Carolina. The father of two drowned to his death. Police found his body in his overturned and partially submerged truck, and they say there were no barriers along the washed-out roadway, not even a warning sign. And this did not happen overnight. The bridge had reportedly been collapsed for a good 5 to 10 years. So what gives? What explains this? The family of the deceased, in fact, are suing Google Maps for this. Philip Paxson's wife has said, and I'm quoting, "Our girls ask how and why their daddy died, and I am at a loss for words they can understand, because as an adult, I still cannot understand how those responsible for the GPS directions and the bridge could have acted with so little regard for human life." Paxson's lawyers allege that several people had tried to flag the washed-out bridge to Google. In the year 2020, a Hickory resident tried to use the Suggest and Edit feature to get Google to address the issue, as per reports. The attorneys allege Google never responded to the suggestion. Philip Paxson is not the first person whose death has been tied to GPS. In the year 2020, an 18-year-old Russian motorist froze to death after being stranded in a vehicle for a week. He was following a Google Maps route through the notorious Road of Bones. In 2019, a truck driver in Jakarta drove off a cliff. He was following a Google Maps route that was only meant for motorcycles, the Straits Times reported. In the year 2015, 51-year-old Zora Hussain died in a fiery car accident in Indiana. Her husband was following his car's built-in GPS when he drove off an unmarked toll road leading to a demolished bridge. He sued the state of Indiana over the lack of barricades. So many incidents, but where is the accountability? Also, what is Google Maps doing about this? Moving on for now, Donald Trump Jr.'s tweets made headlines, but as it turned out, his X account, formerly known as Twitter, was hacked. And this led to a chain of tweets that left netizens confused. We're talking about the former President Donald Trump. And that's not the only absurd post I'm referring to. Our next report getting you the complete story.
This post triggered a firestorm. It was put out from the X account of the son of former US President Donald Trump. It read, "I'm sad to announce my father Donald Trump has passed away. I will be running for president in 2024. But as it turned out, the account was hacked. And it didn't publish just one or two posts. Social media users saw a bunch of absurd tweets from Trump Jr.'s account. After 20 minutes of the tweet going online, an unrelated post by Donald Trump on Truth Social proved he was not actually dead. Later, the hacked account put out this tweet. North Korea is about to get smoked. Trump Jr.'s account also targeted US President Biden and Elon Musk. One of the tweets read, "My dad owns you, Elon Musk." Trump Jr.'s spokesperson, Andrew Surabian, said that the messages were obviously not true and confirmed that the account was hacked. Reports say that it's still unclear if Trump Jr. had enabled the two-factor authentication and if the hacker had access to his personal messages. Yet the incident was yet another reminder. Don't believe everything you see on the internet. Let's take the fake Pentagon blast tweet as an example. Do you remember the image which showed an explosion near the Pentagon? The image had gone viral on the platform and left fact-checkers scrambling. Officials confirmed it was fake. And let's not forget about deepfakes, photorealistic images which are created using artificial intelligence. Remember the deep fakes of Donald Trump getting arrested? The pictures garnered millions of views on X. The governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, also published deepfakes of Trump, where he was seen hugging and embracing Dr. Anthony Fauci. So, you get the point. Beware of fake posts, and do not believe everything that you see on the internet. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
On to some breaking inputs that are coming in right this minute here on Gravitas. The latest on the escalating India-Canada diplomatic row. Just moments ago, the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau held a press briefing. This was after his allegations about the Khalistani leader, Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar's killing. Now, his clarification, his latest statements coming in after India, remember, suspended visa services for Canadians. This is amid escalating tensions between the two sides. Let me just tell you more about what Justin Trudeau has said just moments ago. He says that there is credible reason to believe agencies of Government of India were involved in the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil. That's what he said. Essentially, he is insisting on what he has said earlier on the matter, saying now also that he has that we have robust process. He also says that we will follow the course, and we call on the Government of India to engage with us and to find the truth of the matter, quote unquote. That is what he has said. He also said that he has had a direct and frank conversation with the Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. That's what Justin Trudeau has said just a short while back. Let's listen in.
We call upon the government of India to work with us, to take seriously these allegations and to allow justice to follow its course.
Let's go straight across now to Siddhant Sibal, who's with us on the broadcast for more on this. Siddhant, tell us more about what exactly the Canadian Prime Minister has said.
Well, he basically has reiterated what he has been saying in the past, that there is a credible proof of Indian government's involvement in the killing of Nijjar, and basically reiterating what he has said in the past, including the fact that he has raised the matter with the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Remember, on 10th of September, on the sidelines of the G20 summit here in Delhi, there was a meeting between the two leaders in which the Indian side, of course, raised the issue of Khalistani extremism finding a safe haven in Canada. Now, today was a day where we saw a lot of developments, including, of course, India suspending visa services. The Canadians, India, of course, also asking the Canadians to to give a parity in terms of the number of Canadian diplomats here in Delhi versus the diplomats in Ottawa and in other missions or in Canada. But all in all, whatever happened in the press conference is essentially deja vu, because he hasn't come up with new facts. He hasn't, of course, stated the evidences and, of course, to give any fact or evidence to back his claim that India was involved in the killing of Nijjar. But all in all, the relationship hitting a rock bottom since the Canadian Prime Minister made his remarks earlier this week. And since then, we have seen how there has been a shrillness in the relationship, which it looks like will not go away anytime soon.
Right. Stay with me, Siddhant, just for the benefit of viewers who might be tuning in right this minute. Just moments ago, the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, as a part of that press briefing, reiterating what he has said earlier, is the same statement essentially, again, without evidence. He has attempted a face saver, but repeating what he has said earlier without evidence. Siddhant, let's just also talk about what the Indian side has said and maintained on this, with the strong statements coming in just hours ago from the Ministry of External Affairs as well.
Well, yes, so we saw that weekly press conference by the Indian External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bagchi. That was a pretty long press conference, 44-minute long press conference, out of which 40 minutes was just devoted on the Canada row. But essentially, he pointing out to several facts. First, of course, there hasn't been any evidence shared by the Canadian side. Second, of course, there needs to be a parity in terms of number of Canadian diplomats here in Delhi versus the number of Indian diplomats in Ottawa. The third, of course, how how Canada, in fact, has become a safe haven for terrorists, which is a pretty strong statement coming from the Indian side. Also, essentially pointing out that how India has shared a list of 20 or more individuals who have been responsible in a lot of negative acts, including, of course, dealing with drugs and others as well. And there hasn't been any action by the Canadian side. India has sought extradition of many of these individuals. So there's a long list by the MEA which was pointed out, including, of course, how there has been a discrimination when it comes to giving visas to ex-Indian army officials, which has been a thorny issue. So all in all, a long list, but the message is clear that India-Canada relationship will be in a negative terrain, perhaps frozen for a pretty long time because of the allegations by the Canadian Prime Minister earlier this week in the Canadian Parliament on India.
Absolutely serious repercussions as far as the India-Canada relationship is concerned. The Canadian Prime Minister, for those of you just joining us, is reiterating the same statement that he's put out, not budging. In fact, he says, quote unquote, there is credible reason to believe that agencies of the government of India were involved in the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil, quote unquote. But yet again, he fails to provide evidence to back that statement. Let's just listen in to what he said just a short while back.
We call upon the government of India to work with us, to take seriously these allegations and to allow justice to follow its course. We call upon the government of India to work with us, to take seriously these allegations and to allow justice to follow its course.
Siddhant, with the Canadian Prime Minister failing to provide evidence and pretty much repeating what he has said earlier in spite of the backlash that he has received domestically, the leader of opposition himself has questioned Trudeau's statement and questioned the fact that there has been no evidence, just a statement from the Canadian leader, and all of this putting the India-Canada relationship into this deep freeze mode, as you were also pointing out. Let's also talk about the question that the Canadian Prime Minister was asked regarding the suspension of the visa services, the decision that's been made by India. Tell us more about what he has said on that front.
Essentially, we know that this is a development which is rocking Canada as well, and this is a question that was bound to be asked to the Canadian side. And remember, this is an important development because there is a huge Indian diaspora and Indian Canadians, and this decision impacts them. But essentially, we know that many of them have been involved in anti-India activities, and this worries India. So if we look at the comments made by the Canadian Prime Minister, which basically does not budge from his previous stance, shows that it is highly unlikely that a backdown is coming from the Canadian Prime Minister. And remember, this is the third time that the Canadian Prime Minister has spoken on this issue. The first was in the Parliament. The second was in the Parliament, but that was a brief statement in which basically he said that he does not intend to provoke India. And the third, of course, today, and basically essentially repeating what he has been saying on the issue. Basically, he said on the evidence, the decision to share the information was not done lightly. It was done with utmost seriousness. He also said that there is a credible allegation and we need to take these allegations seriously as Canadians. He said that he has a direct conversation with the Prime Minister, which we have talked about during the sidelines of the G20 meeting when they had a meeting. But all in all, the message is clear from the Canadian side that when it comes to this allegation, they're going to continue to pursue it. But what India has said...
Continue to pursue it, yes, Siddhant. But that's also in spite of the backlash that the Canadian leader has received domestically. Also, the kind of lack of support that he's received from his allies. Let's listen in to what the Canadian leader has said on that just a short while back.
We're standing up for the rules-based order. We're standing up for the rule of law. We're highlighting how unacceptable it would be for any country to be involved in the killing of a citizen on their own home soil. And that's something we will continue to stand for. We're standing up for the rules-based order. We're standing up for the rule of law. We're highlighting how unacceptable it would be for any country to be involved in the killing of a citizen on their own home soil. And that's something we will continue to stand for.
So what we are seeing play out essentially is a repeat of what the Canadian Prime Minister has said. We've seen how he has faced a series of questions domestically, internationally. He's also pretty much been seen standing alone on the global stage after making those shocking allegations against India. The India-Canada relationship, as we've been discussing here on Gravitas as well, has suffered this huge setback, all thanks to what it seems is the domestic vote bank politics of the Canadian Prime Minister. Now, he has come out and given out that press briefing, but he's repeating what he said earlier. Again, there is no proof, no evidence, only claims that he has put out and repeated what he has said. This was his first press briefing, essentially, since those allegations that he made about the Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar's killing. And like we said, another Khalistani terrorist has been killed on Canadian soil, but the Canadian Prime Minister refuses to issue a statement along similar lines after the latest killing. And we will continue to monitor those developments coming in very closely. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas tonight. Leaving you with Gravitas Images. Thank you for watching.
Merry Christmas!
It's easy to tell you a flat story. It's easy to show you what's happening around the world. We do the difficult part.
This weapon has been banned, but the US, Ukraine and Russia do not find the bombs problematic.
We also tell you why what's happening.
New drug is making a difference in the fight against Alzheimer's.